What is up, Mercury fam? I am Erika Day, and I am joined today by Stephen and Griner. Welcome back to the PHNX Mercury. It's been a week on Planet Mercury, and I haven't gotten to chat with Stephen very much. It's been a holiday weekend. We were both very, very busy. I'm just going to apologize ahead of time because I haven't exactly had a voice all weekend. So if I sound a little crazier than normal, I do apologize. We got fellow Wildcat behind the screen working the X's and O's, Mr. Kevin Thomas, as some of you may know him as the prodigious Kevin Thomas, fellow Jeff Sims denier. Very excited to have him behind the screen with us today. But also in the chat, we've got my good friend David, maybe Nate squared tomorrow. Who knows? Maybe a little joke being played tomorrow. I'm not going to spoil nothing for y'all. But we also got Andy and Stephen. Like I said, it's been a week. I haven't gotten to chat with you much. What's going on? How you been?
Been blessed as always. Been a lot of fun stuff going on. The Mercury have a win for us to speak to. That's always fun. They're starting to look a little bit more like themselves. And yeah, you got plenty to dive into. A lot of news. So let's go ahead and get to it. But how was your holiday weekend? How's everything been going? How are you?
I'm gonna be real with you. This homestand is catching up to my sleep schedule right now. I got out of the arena in record time yesterday. I was very proud of myself. I was in bed by 1:00 in the morning on a game day, which if you guys don't know, I drive from Phoenix to Tucson every day. So that is pretty impressive if I do say so myself. So I'm coming to you guys today with a full night of sleep, which you guys should just feel #super blessed for, because if you spoke to me yesterday, David in the chat can attest to this. I was not exactly myself. So I'm glad you guys are getting the best version of me today. That being said, though, don't forget to leave us a like. And if you're watching us on Twitter, click the link below. Join us in the live chat on YouTube. And if you are listening on your audio only platform, be sure to subscribe to this channel and give us a thumbs up and a 5-star review. That being said, though, we got a little bit of MVP talk to get to because I've been seeing too many people play on her name, and she dropped a little 40 piece on us in the Mercury in the Footprint Center last week. And to me personally, that cemented everything we've been saying on this show, that she was the unanimous MVP. And I'm going to just say it. If I see any third or fourth place voters this year, straight to jail for those voters.
Well, there's a couple of things to tackle with that. First of all, I think the proper title for the award is M''VP.
That's why I gave a little space.
It's not even hers to lose. You can take the to lose part off of it. It's just hers. It's quite literally hers. I think that any other prefacing of a conversation about MVP and not putting an apostrophe in there and not having Asia's name tied specifically to it without a gap between her and the rest of the competition is just not doing her justice. She is the MVP. She's the M''VP, excuse me. She's also by far the best player in the W, and continues to create space from the pack, which is a illustrious list of names included in the conversations for that award. And generally speaking, players that are in the top 10 with the W. So that is the big part of it. And the sub segment of it, and you speak to voting, which is something that I 1,000% desire to be a part of going forward, because these players are far too good for the inaccurate assessing of talents and who makes the ultimate first team, second team of this award and that award, who ultimately receives an award, and for their contracts to be tied in with who's receiving these postseason awards as well. These players deserve people that watch the game and understand what they're doing and understand why it is they are doing or why it is they're not doing what they're doing, and assessing things from the correct lens from that perspective. And that's something I ultimately desire to be a part of. And for another season in a row, I'm hoping that the people that do have that privilege and honor, because it certainly is a privilege and honor, are doing their work in diligence, because there's a lot of competition for multiple awards this season. And I would just hate for these players to continue to be shorted in any capacity because somebody only watched the games that were nationally televised and the games that were in their market. That's not doing the job thoroughly. We as a media group have to be better, particularly those that do have that privilege at this moment in time. And I just hope that with the evolution, and hopefully I can be a part of that, that those things do change and we do see the people get their just due in terms of the athletes.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to make sure we had a little moment and said that because that little 40 piece, it was just light work. And you watched Asia walk in her sweatpants and her white t-shirt, and the tweets came afloat in that we knew it was about to happen to us, and we sure did. You could feel it in the arena. And needless to say, so she has that performance against the Mercury on, I don't even remember what day that was, Thursday. And then yesterday scores what, more than 60% of the Vegas points to like 36 of their 54 points or some ridiculous number. Like he's doing it all every night, night in, night out. And like if it's just like Stephen said, the war is over. Everyone put their guns down.
I mean, unless you jousting for second place and third place and fourth place, which I believe Kalia Copper is 1000% in that top four for the MVP race. She might have slipped from second or third to fourth, but she's no lower than fourth. There's definitely competition in that, but I do think that first place they can already stamp Asia Wilson and get that thing mailed over to her crib and all of that fun stuff because that's a wrap.
But now that that's out of the way, we do got to talk about the game from the Mercury stand side just a little bit. And, we've been talking on it all, well, I won't say all season, mostly just since the Olympic break, that these first quarter starts have been really, really rough. And, and this is no tier shade to the Fever because it's just a team. I'm going to use it as an example. They started out with a 6-point quarter against the Fever, and they were able to kind of claw their way out of that. And that shows the Phoenix Mercury's veteran experience on the team when they're able to kind of dig deeper and find their way out of that deficit. But when you're playing a team like the Las Vegas Aces with Asia Wilson, Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum, Jackie Young, like you are playing with the best of the best who've won the best of the against the best of the best, and you're not going to come out of a 19-point first quarter deficit against the Aces on top.
No, you're not. And to your point, and it's hard to see when we speak to all of the things that we've spoken to and you emphasize the things that I've emphasized all season long with this Mercury team. If you had to guess, Erika, what place would you say the Phoenix Mercury are in terms of point score on average on a first quarter basis since the Olympic All-Star break's return?
I'm going to be real, 12th.
Correct. Do you want to take a guess at what the number on average is?
12 points.
Now you shorten it a little too much. 17.6. That's their
I'm just
average.
thinking all the 9. There was 2 9-point quarters, a 6, a 10. Like
I get it 100%.
I'm not as good as math as you are, Stephen.
17.6%. Erika, they have third to worst field goal percentage, generally speaking, in first quarters post-Olympic stretch. 37.4% on 16.3 field goal attempts, which that 16.3 field goal attempts is the second least, only to the Washington Mystics in the first quarter. You look even more specifically at three-point shooting, 22.4%. 22.4% in first quarters. Not going to get it done. Just not going to get it done in any capacity. You could look past that as well. You can also look at turnovers. They're the worst team taking care of the basketball in first quarters since the Olympic All-Star stretch. 5 turnovers on average every first quarter since the Olympic All-Star return. Those things are just not going to get it done. And the last thing, fouling. 4.1 fouls per first quarter since returning to play. That is third worst. Those things, the turnovers, the inefficient shooting, the lack of ball movement, which they're also last in first quarters as well. Only 4 assists per first quarter since the Olympic stretch's return. Those things that just put you so far behind the 8 ball, and past putting you behind the 8 ball, it also breaks your own rhythm and also plays to the favor of your opponent. So now you have to play the game to get yourself back in rhythm, but you also have to go up against the opponent who's already got it going because of how wildly you're kind of throwing the ball around the floor and just not executing and giving them opportunities to put up more attempts at the basket. You have to figure that part out. You would hate to see that kind of transfer to their games on the road with the road games that they have ahead of them on the schedule. And they can't tackle that monster that's been the road for them this season without tackling those things in process prior to that happening.
Yes. And, it's actually funny. Our producer, Kevin, and I were talking about this before we started. And the team has, before the Olympic break, was just so damn good at home. Like, it was almost ridiculous. And the law of averages says eventually that has to catch up with them. And I think, unfortunately, the time has come. And, Nate said it best yesterday in the pregame presser. Like, they're just going through a rough patch. And, like, it happens in basketball. And, before we get too much to, like, talking about the playoffs, but, like, I hate to be this person, but like playoff seeding has never mattered ever to literally any basketball team and their ability to win. And if this team gets hot at the right time, they have just as much of ability to win as any other team in the eight other draw. And so like this team is ridiculously talented and has just come out, for lack of a better term, lifeless a little bit in this second half of the season and has needed to find their groove again. I personally, but again, before we get to this, talk about the Atlanta Dream tomorrow, or it's yesterday, I think, playing without their point guard actually kind of helped them to dig a little deeper and find what they need to win the game and, bring a little more out of each other because playing with Tosh Cloud, she pulls so much out of everybody that like there's only so much left to give. And I think yesterday them playing without their point guard was really, really good for their mentality in order to move forward into the playoffs and be, again, mentally ready for the playoffs.
Yeah, they have to they have to figure out how to not be so reliant on Natasha Cloud. She does have a lot of weight to pull in terms of how well this team operates on the offensive side of the floor. And I don't think this roster was constructed for them to be this reliant on Natasha Cloud to pull so much of the strings. We talked about it with Nikias last week. This team is very dependent on her drives, and also on her operation against the types of coverages that she sees when she's initiating offense or if she's in pick and roll or dribble handoff scenarios. They can't be this reliant on her, and it's going to be on, first of all, their process and, like we talked about last week, getting the ball to Brittany Griner and doing so on consistency, and then also allowing for Kalia Copper and her touches and her flow and her rhythm to all work in succession with one another to best position Natasha to be in a situation where she's not being this relied upon. And then the last kind of big thing in it, which is not something that I worry about in any capacity. In fact, I think that as the games grow more meaningful, we'll see uptick in the efficiency and effectiveness. But Diana Taurasi and her usage and her ability to have an impact on the game past just momentum type of stretches and in fourth quarters. I think that Diana's impact will be a lot more felt once we get to the playoffs. Obviously, that still remains to be seen, but it's beyond a shadow of a doubt that I believe that she'll handle her business as far as that goes. I think the more involved Diana gets, in addition to BG getting more touches and more rhythm, and Kalia being more intentionally featured in different ways within the offense, that it'll lessen the demand on Natasha that we've seen. And this is part of the regular season, and this is why you can't ignore any stretch in the 40-game marathon that is the regular season for the W, because teams go through ebbs and flows, teams go through highs and lows, They use specific sets for a certain segment of the regular season, and then they go away from them so that teams can't get enough film to kind of really use it against them come playoff time. There's a reason why a lot of things are happening. Some things we saw earlier, we haven't seen as much in the middle stretch or this latter stretch. It's all with reasoning. And I genuinely and generally think that Natasha won't be as there won't be as much of a demand on everything that she's been doing for the last month or a little bit over a month now, come playoff time. And that bodes well for the Mercury and bodes well for their ceiling in terms of what they can make happen in the first round and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to take a second to say hello to the comments. We got Ogre, Mr. Jake McFubin saying what's up. He popped in, even though he's going bowling with his niece. I just think that is like the sweetest thing I've ever seen today. We got Mr. Andy, and we have a first-time viewer of the show. Let me scroll up so I don't say her name incorrectly. Esty. And then also Chloe, who I know very well on Twitter. We have a hoot of a time over on the PHNX_Mercury account all the time. So shout out to her for joining. I'm actually not able to say her username online because it's very inappropriate, but just know it's hilarious. And if you know, you know. That being said, thanks for joining us today. And I'm really excited to kind of talk about something positive. You know, I was itching to do it. You know, I had a rough weekend. And then yesterday, I really didn't even feel like driving to Phoenix. I'm like, dude, like, I can't do this. And we get to the game and let me tell you, I think I told you this when you were in town. If you remember the parking spot I parked in when I very first met you, I said, we've never lost a game when I parked here. In fact, the only game we lost when I parked there was the game that you came to, Stephen. And so I come around the corner yesterday, and there she is in all her glory, wide open. And I'm like, that's it. Stephen ain't here, and my parking spot's open. That's a dub. And we clinched. And so, you know, thank you to the Phoenix Mercury, first of all, for doing their jobs, coming out. Before we go any further, let's talk about first quarter Kalia motherfucking Copper, because she came out 3 for 3 in the first 2 minutes, and it just kept going. Like, you know, we kind of had a running joke on the media row, like, is this it? Is it going to be our 40 piece right here, right now? And it wasn't needed. So I'm glad that she didn't exhaust herself to score 40 points by all means. That being said, though, it was an absolutely ridiculous performance from Kalia Copper, specifically in that first quarter, that really helped put the Phoenix Mercury in an excellent position for success over the Atlanta Dream.
Yes, and Kalia got going early, downhill, got a couple easy layups. The corner 3-pointers were going down on consistency, which is something that she's obviously emphasized in her growth as a player, as we've spoken to in detail with her conversations with Nate Tibbetts and where he would like for her to take more shots from. And she's a monster. Kalia is a monster. She is one of the most prolific scorers of the basketball in the W. She's the best slasher in all of the W. And when she gets it going, in tandem with everything that Brittany Griner is as an interior presence on offense, playmaking and scoring for herself, it can be too much for an opponent. And that's what we saw. We saw a clean flow of Brittany Griner getting her post touches, Kalia Copper getting a paint touch. Now Kalia's in rhythm. She's knocking down her midi pull-up, and she's also knocking down catch and shoot three-point opportunities. We saw both of those two things happening in succession with one another. And when they get that in process, that's what makes the Mercury tough to beat, because now the shot profile is nuanced, it's diverse. The two best players on the court are operating as such, and it's just too much. It's too much, even without the likes of Natasha Cloud. And I will continue to remind people also without the likes of Rebecca Allen as well. Big to their process, both of those two pieces, not having them, yet still being able to get to their process with those two players in BG and Ka, it means everything. That's the way they need to go about setting a tone for games. Sometimes they can kind of get lost at times, but when they go about it the way that they did yesterday, and the other big thing in that being that their defense showed up early, they played to the game plan specifically, and they did a great job with the activity, keeping their shell intact, making rotations, solid with their switching. Everything was how it needed to be for their offense to be optimized. We saw the explosion on offense in the first quarter that we did because of that. And like I said, it's BG and Kalia being featured the way that they need to be, but also the defense being where it needed to be early on in the game as well.
And I did a little disservice. I skipped over the little tech talk real quick. So let's rewind. Because we didn't even tell the people about the lack of Natasha Cloud in this game. So before we do that, though, I would like to tell you about our good friends over at Empire Flooring, which is a new sponsor for our show over here today. And I'm really excited because listen, these people, they don't do business just like everyone else. They are easy, quick, and convenient. Their speed and service is what they're about, and they're not like every other big box store. My favorite thing about them is you can take a picture of the room you're getting the flooring installed in, go onto their website, empiretoday.com/PHNX, and upload that picture and test out the flooring right in your living room. That is pretty cool, I must say. And so, our good friends over at Empire Flooring would love to help you out. So again, go to empiretoday.com/PHNX. That being said, though, the tech talk. The Phoenix Mercury are currently leading the WNBA with 32 technical fouls. And this is through every game played so far. Right now, Tosh leads the way with 7, and she served her time for this 7th foul in the game against the Atlanta Dream yesterday. And then after Tosh, we've got Diana and Cobb both with 6, so they're edging that suspension territory. I want to say this. This team has been extremely fun to watch at times because of the technical fouls, and the team has also been extremely frustrating to watch at times because of the technical fouls. And it goes both ways. And playing with the passion that they play with is something that you have to win, especially as a lower seed in the playoffs. That being said, the mentality that they have, it needs to mature just a little bit so that they can keep things in check in the game and their head doesn't get too ball to put the ball in the hoop.
Yep. And that's the volatility that I spoke to last week. It's going to be highs and lows with it. It's going to be sudden. It's going to be kind of random sometimes. These players care a lot about basketball, in case you didn't know. These players are very passionate about their profession, in case you didn't know. And naturally, you have to, some of them will be ill-timed, but you can't get the positive parts that come from the spark that they're able to kind of be for the team to potentially get them out of the mud or kind of just recourse the flow of a game at times without the ill-timed ones. It's just give and take. It's something that, in my honest opinion, when you assemble a roster the likes of the Phoenix Mercury, you have to kind of just have that anticipated. It just has to be. It just has to be. That's the way these players are built individually. They've all been like that at multiple stops over the course of their career. It's just who they are.
Well, and I'll be honest, I remember, I'm going to have to go back and do some digging in our early episodes, but I feel as though we said that there was going to be a record set.
Oh, 1,000. I don't know if we said a record set, but we did say that they would lead the league in technical fouls, though.
And they surely do.
That shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. Whether you've listened to us, which we appreciate you if you do, or if you're new. If you're looking across the league and you're looking at what team might lead the league in technical fouls, again, obviously you don't want to set a historic precedent with it, but it was just inevitable. When you put this roster together, it's inevitable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean that in the most endearing way too. This is not derogatory.
We mean this
in
in a
capacity.
respectfully way. Yes.
Absolutely. Like I said, you put a dog with a dog and another dog and a bunch of other dogs, there's gonna be a lot of barking. It's inevitable. You can't put babies together and they're not gonna cry together. Same way we put dogs together. Put one dog with another, it's gonna be a little bit of sniffing, but it's gonna be a lot of barking. And that's exactly what we've seen this season. That's what makes this Mercury team who they are.
Yeah, thank you, David. My loyal fact checker. I literally texted him before the show today to make sure I had the foul count correctly. I did not. David did. And so the Sky and the Wings have 16. That is less, like that is quite literally half of the Phoenix Mercury. So shout out to our squad for being good at something, and like I know the picture of Diana is floating around Twitter. She's having a field day. She's having a blast with this team. I won't say that I think this is my Diana's favorite Mercury team she's ever played with, but I think this is definitely the most fun she's ever had with a group.
Well, for it to be a favorite, I'm not speaking for Diana, but I could anticipate only way it could be a favorite, you got to win the chip. Don't
All
mean
right,
a
fine.
thing without that ring. All the other stuff is cute, but when it comes down to the nitty gritty, did you get a ring or not? Diana doesn't be. She's not the basketball player. Doesn't have the mystique that she does. If that's not what the bar is, it's just that simple. You know what time it is with Diana.
Well, let's talk about someone that's very level-headed, very calm, very collected. Maybe turns the ball over a little bit, but that's okay. She's the youngest on the squad. We'll let it slide for now. That being said, I would like Kevin to bring up this graphic we have for Celeste Taylor. And listen, I was really excited for Celeste to get her first career start. First of all, to start at point guard in the WNBA is very difficult. I'll let Stephen fill you in on that, but she was second on the team in minutes played under only Sophie Cunningham by a singular second, and this was her very first career start. She assisted on 2 buckets, rebounded the ball at a very decent rate, and has two steals and a block. And I'm going to let Steven kind of talk about the other than the stat sheet type stuff because he's really good at that. But she came out the water fighting, and you just have to appreciate she has definitely bounced around from, the Mercury to the Fever to the Sun, and she is willing to fight for her spot on a roster. And she comes out every night and proves it, and it's extremely, extremely fun to watch.
Yeah, well said on your end. And I think you said, especially, I want to emphasize this part in particular, that Celeste does things that just will not be equated by a box score. And as David is illustrating in our comments, Celeste was +8 yesterday. That is probably the most indicative of her impact. If you're looking at a box score, the team was better. They were just better with her on the floor yesterday. The defense in particular. Celeste, her calling card to the WNBA is her defense, first, second, and third. She was the defensive player of the year in her conference multiple times over the latter stretch of her collegiate career. And that's her calling card. Everything that she's bringing to the table, the most value she's going to add to your team is going to be on the defensive end. And we saw that. Yes, we saw that yesterday. The ability to guard 1 through 4 is something that is not valued enough, especially with the offensive explosion and the evolution of the W that's occurring. Having players that can guard multiple positions past their native position is extremely important. That's something that Celeste is very good at. What's good?
And dare I say, it almost is a little Tosh Cloud reminiscent, which is exactly the player she was filling in for. I'm not going to say that I see a mini Tosh Cloud just yet, but I see a mini Tosh Cloud.
Which is what I was getting to.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry.
Nah, you good. Nah, you good. You good. You just threw the oop off the backboard for me. I appreciate that. Point being, Celeste defending the way that she did with the activity that she did on consistency, eerily reminiscent of Natasha Cloud. And when you're down both Natasha Cloud and Rebecca Allen, which if you've been listening to our podcast, you know that those are 2 of the main 3 pillars in the defensive identity and defensive process for the Phoenix Mercury. Obviously, the third being Brittany Griner. They can't defend the way that they desire to without both Rebecca Allen and Natasha Cloud being as great in the style of defense that they play and in their abilities and versatility that they bring. Celeste Taylor very much aligns with the type of ancillary players that they need on this roster for them to be their best selves. They have a lot of offense. Offense should never be an issue for this team. The biggest riddle for them to solve, like I mentioned in the opening episode for us this season, was going to be how quickly do they solve the defensive side, and do they have the bodies to defend to facilitate to the style of offense that they desire to. Celeste, as we see with the numbers on the graphic here, did just that yesterday. Chipped in multiple ways on the margins for this team, and the biggest punch for her coming with her defense. Like I said, they can't be equated by the box score. Just the things that she did, the switching, the ability to guard in the post multiple times, front the post, play behind the post, poke the ball away, just compile all types of deflections, get the team out in transition multiple times off of her activity, switching, communicating preemptively. She just did a lot of great things, defending in a way that is not anticipated for a rookie. And the fact that she does really just speaks to the ceiling that she has in terms of her career as she finds her footing on the offensive side of the floor.
Yes, and to answer our good friend Chloe, yes, they will have to either sign her to a perma contract or release her at the end of this 7 day. They only get 3 per team, so this is her third with the Phoenix Mercury. And I tweeted it yesterday. I want it signed now. Whether that happens or not, who knows? I can only be a fly on the wall for so many conversations. That being
Is
said,
that nah 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 nah
oh,
nah. Mm-mm, mm-mm, mm-mm. So, Erika, remember we had these conversations about players that the Mercury might be able to add after the trade deadline, yada yada yada. Remember those conversations?
mm-hmm.
Remember one of the names that we brought up? Well, two of the names we brought up. One of which Monique Billings gets to the second 7-day contract, and before that ended, she was already signed. No surprise there. The other big name that I mentioned, there's one that I don't think is going to happen this season. If it does, it will happen maybe going into next season potentially. We'll see with prioritization, all of that fun stuff. Not going to touch on that. But the name that is stateside, that is presently on her third 7-day contract, Odyssey Sims. The Los Angeles Sparks are not a team that has playoff aspirations in any capacity, largely because of the amount of injuries that they've seen this season. I'll make sure I note that. But also, Odyssey Sims recently signed her third 7-day contract with the Los Angeles Sparks. That means that there's going to be a decision that has to be made. I'm not connected source-wise. I'm not reporting anything. But I will say, the Phoenix Mercury recently traded their backup point guard, Suge Sutton, to the Washington Mystics, who will be back in town for their next upcoming game tomorrow. There's some revenge factor to keep in mind with that. I will say, Celeste Taylor certainly earned the opportunity to return on a full-time contract for the rest of the season. But if there's even an inkling of opportunity for Nick Urin to bring in Odyssey Sims, it will happen. I don't think there's a better fit in terms of teams that have contending endeavors and contending perspective on this season. There's not a better fit around the league to get a player that can shoot the way that Odyssey Sims does, another veteran that matches the timeline for this team, a player that can drive and create for herself, but also play and pick and roll, but also be able to play off the ball to where she's not taking the ball out of the hands of Kalia Copper or Diana Taurasi or Brittany Griner. Also a player that has to be respected when she's on the floor. No one's going to just be ducking under screens and leaving Odyssey wide open, because we saw the Mercury try to do that multiple times when she was with the Wings. And we saw what that impact was multiple times this season. There's just too many dots connected there, and I just don't see them not seeing about that. That 7-day contract, I think, will be up early next week if my math is correct. So be on the lookout for that. Otherwise, if it's not Odyssey Sims, I do think that Celeste Taylor is back on the rest of the season contract with the Mercury.
It's up on Saturday. But I do want to
Okay.
say I've done the math, and they have the roster spots for both. And if my math is
Okay.
correct, they have the salary cap for both.
Okay.
Granted, I told you a few minutes ago that I'm not that good at math, but I do believe that's what the math says. So, yeah, hopefully we know a little bit more by the end of the week.
And one or two more quick points with Odyssey Sims. We talked about dogs. Odyssey is very much a dog. Very, very much a dog. A dog that has the temperament to where she's not going to add to the technical dynamic of things, but there's a lot of value in having that. And then the other big thing with Odyssey plays solid defense. She's on the latter end of her career in terms of her age for a basketball player, but she gets after it. And if you put her in a role in a context with the Phoenix Mercury, you're going to see a version similar. It's not going to be to the same extent because of the volume of minutes that she won't be getting in comparison to her time spent with the Wings earlier this season when they had all of their injuries. But you'll get an action-packed player that can be an X factor, no pun intended, to everything that the Mercury have already established and be that type of spark that they've been looking to get from that backup point guard position.
Before we go any further back and get back to the game against the Dream, and I told Stephen I wanted to bully y'all a little bit because last night I'm driving home from the Mercury game, and I ain't gonna admit to texting and driving or nothing, but I was seeing some tweets that I did not like very much. And in fact, they low key gave me nightmares. And I need to just address the elephant in the room, and that is Kalia Copper and her friendship with the team just a little north of us, the Las Vegas Aces. And there's been a lot of speculation surrounding her name and a trade and da 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 da. And let me just say this, Stephen is the king of calming me down for real, for real, for real, and getting me off of Twitter and keeping me out the rabbit holes. You know what I'm saying? And so if Stephen can keep me out the rabbit hole on this one, he can keep all of us out of the rabbit hole. And I see Kobe in the comments talking about how Becky needs Ka. And you know what? Becky can shove her needs somewhere else. I don't care what Becky needs. And I asked this question yesterday. Quite frankly, can any team in the WNBA afford to pay all three, Jackie Young, Asia Wilson, and Kalia Copper? I'm gonna be real with you. Legally, I think not. So I just wanted to say that to stop throwing the trade rumors around because that's all they are. Yeah, us Phoenix fans are very familiar, with the Kevin Durant nonsense and all the mumbo jumbo that they try to say every single offseason about trades happening here in Phoenix. And I just want to put this one to the bed. Okay, it's not happening.
Yeah, it's not happening. I think there's some adversity coming with the Aces because this roster that they have is going to get hefty on a salary cap side of things. There's going to be some decisions that have to be made, and it's going to have this team looking a little different than they have these last 4 seasons. With the expansion, it's inevitable that they're going to lose something. We all know it's not going to be Asia Wilson in any capacity, so we can stop with the Asia talk. We can also stop with the Kalia Copper talk because we heard what she said at her media day of availability. She hadn't even dribbled a basketball in an official game yet, and she was talking ad nauseum about how much she loved this, that, and the third about everything that was Phoenix. Only thing she didn't like about Phoenix, what she said she would get used to, was the heat. Because she's a long way from North Philly.
And you know what? I don't even want to hear the complaint about the heat because she's signing up to go to Miami in the wintertime. So all I'm saying is if you didn't like the heat now, you sure as shit ain't going to like Miami. Okay?
Fair point. But my point's being that for that, in addition to contractually, she just signed a multi-year extension at the end of last season with the Chicago Sky before she ultimately demanded the trade, obviously, and was able to work her way to Phoenix. She's not going anywhere anytime soon, and I'm not a betting man. I continue to preface with that, but I would put money on, unless there's an expansion team that surfaces in Philadelphia, I don't think there's any way that Kalia is leaving the Phoenix Mercury. The franchise has been too kind to her, and the courting part of the relationship building, but also she understands that Diana Taurasi is not going to be playing basketball for 10 more seasons, and that when Diana does ultimately decide to turn this chapter on her life and transition into whatever it is that she desires to do after playing professional basketball, this franchise is going to be Kalia Copper's. And that's something. Ka is one that always steps up to challenges. If you didn't know that already, just do a little research. You'll see that quickly. The challenge of being the best player for a team, a franchise as illustrious historically as the Phoenix Mercury, and trying to bring it up to that same bar that Diana is going to be leaving. I don't think there's any player in the W that's on the perimeter that will be up to that challenge more than Kalia Copper will be. And I think all of those things, in addition to the style of play, how she matches with Nate Tibbetts, and how she's so easy to build around as far as building a team, all those things just make entirely too much sense. Kalia has everything that she's desired in Phoenix. And I do think that once Diana is done playing basketball, they'll be able to facilitate a roster around Kalia that helps to put her in a better position to win another championship or 2 or 3 or 4. She's not going anywhere. She ain't going nowhere.
Steven's in a funny mood today. The comments are genuinely hilarious. Y'all have me actually cracking up. DT will be able to hit corner threes into her 60s. Agreed. The sun
Hey,
bothering
I'm
you,
not.
Queen? Points
Yes.
gun. That ain't no
Hmm.
problem. We'll get rid of the sun, girl. We'll go be Alaska, dark year round. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. It'll be what it'll be. And, Chloe, I do think you're probably correct about DT retiring and BG following soon after. I feel like they're kind of the dynamic duo of the Valley, and not that you can't have one without the other, but I feel like when you've played with the comfortability with each other that they have for as long as they have, why would you want to play without the other? If I was Diana and BG had been setting screens, I wouldn't want to play with anyone but BG. And if I was BG and I was setting screens for DT, I don't want to set screens for anybody but DT. Like, get out my face.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't think that BG would be too far behind.
I don't mean
Behind
immediate,
DT
just
as far obviously,
yeah.
yeah. But yeah, that as far as a timeline goes, there's some sense there. But yeah, even past that, I still think that the Mercury will be able to facilitate the roster around Kalia to keep themselves in a contending position. And I think there's a ton of value in that. And I think that the direction that the team is headed as a franchise is building up for that. And we'll have conversations about that when Diana does officially announce that retirement, whether that's this season or next season or after that. Because there's certainly a list of players that I feel like will help with Kalia, that she can kind of help with recruiting and bringing more talent to Phoenix in years to come.
Chloe, if I was BG, I would also complain about my aches and pains. I can imagine her knees have just been suffering for the last many, many moons. You know what I mean? Just suffrage on those knees. I saw her thinking about dunking the basketball yesterday, but I think she thought better of it, that maybe the playoffs are worth it, and like we might not see her in the playoffs if she dunked it, you know?
I love that. I love the funny part of BG's career. She's dunking less, and she's decided to add the surprise factor from dunking with letting that thing fly from deep. Already
Which
had a
actually,
career high from deep in terms of makes, and she's getting very comfortable taking and making these shots. These are not fluky in any capacity.
I don't know if y'all watch WNBA data. She really breaks things down, but she, obviously on pretty few attempts, BG leads 3-point shooting for the Phoenix Mercury, at least the percentage factor of it. But if you average that out, like, and I forget the word she used, but basically, if you brought BG's attempts up to where everyone else is, she would be the 12th best 3-point shooter in the league.
And that's such a scary proposition because BG is already the most imposing inside
Like,
interior presence in the history of the W. You can't guard her on the block. If she does get to the point where she's taking 4 threes a game and she's knocking down 35, 34, 33% of them, she's gonna play until she's 40. Or she's
and
gonna
she
play
still
until she
can't
wants to.
with it. Like, I don't. It's really entertaining. Yeah, I'm expecting BG to make a few threes. I wouldn't say a few, but I when I don't get one, I leave a little disappointed. I'm like, damn, we couldn't get one today. Y'all couldn't get our girl open from beyond for one.
I tell you what, teams keep leaving her open. She's gonna continue to take that and
They'll
make
learn
that.
eventually.
She
With that
will
being said,
oblige.
though, we did get to see the Phoenix Mercury win over the Atlanta Dream. And this puts the Phoenix Mercury in position. They've clinched their playoff spot. The seeding is still up for debate. And quite honestly, it probably will be up for debate until that final day of games. So make sure you buy your tickets now because the end of the season is coming rapidly. And there's only 3 more opportunities for us to have regular season home games in the Footprint Center together. And y'all know I have more fun there than literally anywhere else on planet Earth. So come join me for those last 3 games. But that being said, we've been talking all season. Like, we weren't expecting this team to not make the playoffs. So, not that like it's a wash, but to see it finally happen especially after the way they've been playing since the Olympic break was definitely a big positive to see. And also to see it in a game where they had a backup rookie point guard starting and facilitating the whole game. Like, it was a very impressive win from the squad when they needed it most.
Yeah, I think that things get taken for granted, especially for a franchise as illustrious as the Phoenix Mercury are and have been. Making the playoffs is something that obviously is anticipated when you put together a roster that this franchise has. You still have to celebrate these things and acknowledge them for the point in reference of success that they are, because you can't get to your ultimate desires and goals on the season without that part of it. And you add the context of the adversities that this team has seen in terms of injuries, scheduling, travel, having multiple Olympians, all of these things happening on the roster. For them to still be able to stamp their ticket to the playoffs well ahead of the finish line of the regular season is extremely important. And I just think these things have to be valued. You can't look past them. You can't take them for granted. So major kudos to the team for handling their business. Now obviously they still have a lot of work cut out ahead of them, but this is one big weight off of their shoulders, because there's a handful of teams that wish they had already stamped their tickets to the playoffs. Because every game the rest of the way, I always talk about there's no must wins in the regular season, but almost every game for a couple of teams, the Chicago Sky, the Washington Mystics, the Dallas Wings, and the Atlanta Dream, are very much gotta have it games. That's a lot of pressure in a playoff sense before the playoffs even start. The room for error just shrunk significantly for that foursome of teams that I just mentioned below the Phoenix Mercury in the standings at this moment in time. Each one of those teams has a roster that suggests that they could be a playoff team. Only one of them is going to make it. And the fact that the Mercury as a franchise can say that they don't have to worry about that says and means a lot. It allows for them to kind of make their focus a little bit more concise in terms of what they're looking to execute on process-wise heading into the playoffs. And again, you don't put this team together worrying about who you're going to see in the first round in any capacity. So it's all about the process for them the rest of the way. Figuring out how to get it done on the road, because they're inevitably going to have to win at least one game on the road for them to exit and make it out of the first round successfully. And just generally speaking, getting back healthy and playing their best basketball going into the playoffs.
Yeah, and like I said, Kevin and I were talking about it. I think there's 3 home games and 3 road games remaining for the Phoenix Mercury in the regular season, and I think the Mercury really need to steal one of those road games just to kind of get some confidence back on the road, get their feet under them a little bit. But like you said, like this puts them in a good position to practice for themselves and not prepare for someone else, which when you have a team with the roster build that this one has, like you don't need to scout other players. You need to play your basketball. I think the little losing streak we've been seeing is because the Phoenix Mercury have been trying to play a different type of basketball. Obviously, injuries barring that has been pretty difficult. We talk about how much of a puzzle piece Beck Allen is, and trying to play a style of basketball that Beck Allen requires without Beck Allen just doesn't work. It's like trying to play Suns basketball without Kevin Durant. That just doesn't compute. And so, being able to practice for themselves, put themselves in a good position for the playoffs, and above all else, rest who needs to be rested, whoever that may be for these next 6 games, is extremely important.
Yep. And just kind of a little bit of peek ahead in the schedule. They have 3 remaining road games, like you mentioned, Erika. The Storm, the Sky, and the Sparks. This team was built with certain levels of accountability in mind. There's a certain bar for them. I'm challenging this team. They need to win all 3 of these road games. Get it done. Get it done. That's the type of momentum that they need to have on the road, in particular, going into the playoffs, because they can't get to the goods that they've seen and the elite level team that they've been at home without handling their business on the road. Talked about them being able to brush off the weight of stamping their ticket to the playoffs. That's major. You got 6 games, 3 on the road, 3 at home. I should be challenging them to go 5-1 at worst. You got the big boogaboo in the Connecticut Sun waiting for you at home in one of these games coming next week. We can talk about that when it comes, but this team has to go 3. They have to go 3-0 on the road the rest of the season. I can't remember what their record is on the road off the top of my head, but that would bring them a little bit closer to being 500 on the season on the road in particular. And this team just they have to. That's just where they have to be. They have to be there. There's no yeah. That would put them at 100, at 500 on the road. They're 7-10 right now. They get 3 wins on the road to end the season. They get to 10-10. That's 500. That's a very solid number. Looking at the league as a whole, and less than definitely looking at where this team was early this season versus where they could potentially finish. So handle your business on the road. That's going to be a big barometer for me, gauging them and assessing them for whatever their first round opponent is to come.
Well, and I think just one more thing before we go, like I think I saw a comment about, thank God, or I hope we don't have to see the Fever in the playoffs. I'm gonna say it. Thank God that the Mercury dropped a little bit in the standings and they won't have to do that. Like, I believe there's zero chance that that's going to happen in the first round. And I was telling this to another one of my friends. There's going to be no team that has a home court advantage against the Indiana Fever, and it is going to be a one of a kind experience in the postseason this year. It's going to be really fun to watch, but yeah, I'm just as thankful as you guys are that is very, very, very unlikely for the Phoenix Mercury.
I'll from a athlete's perspective, I'll say this: when you get into a playoff series, things shift. The regular season, one time they played one time they played the Fever on the second end of a road back to back. Another time they played them at the Footprint Center, but it's coming after a road trip, and they just got back into Phoenix back home. Maybe that night before, they might have had some traveling issues getting back home. In addition to that, those things matter in the regular season. When you get to a playoff series, you're talking about you get to focus your scouting, you get to focus all of your game planning, you get to focus all on one specific opponent, and there's no advantage in terms of travel for one team or the other. That changes things. Additionally, when you're looking at the Phoenix Mercury, one of the biggest things they have as an advantage come playoff series, and if you're speaking to that lens, experience. Multiple players that have won a championship with other franchises. They know how to play multiple roles. They know how to adapt and adjust over the course of a series to put themselves in the best position and to also put their team in the best position. There's just depths of invaluability with that. Those are advantages that they would have over the Phoenix Mercury, or over the Indiana Fever. That's generally something that they're going to have against whoever it is that they're going up against in the playoffs. And I think that's something that they would relish if they were to go up against the Indiana Fever in a playoff series context. Things will not look the same as they did in these regular season games. There's credence to it. You can't ignore it, but you also can't overvalue it either, whether it's working in your favor or working against you from a regular season perspective.
See what I mean, folks, about Stephen bringing me back down to planet of the Earth.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't want to say anything disrespectfully about the Indiana Fever, but experience is not something that's going to be on their side in terms of their best players. Aaliyah Boston hasn't played in the playoffs yet. Obviously, Caitlin Clark is a rookie season. She hasn't played in the playoffs yet either. There's tests to come with them. And if they end up matching up with either one of the Minnesota Lynx or Connecticut Sun, those teams are battle tested. The Connecticut Sun haven't won a championship, but they have multiple players that have made it to that round and have been on the brink of making it to that round. And obviously, Dewana Bonner, who all the X Factor knows fairly well, is a player that turns it up when you get to that level. That's not something that the Indiana Fever can say that they have because they haven't seen a lot of their players in that context quite yet. So just make sure we're applying that context when we're looking at these teams in terms of matchups coming.
Well, if you want to know where you can buy more of this, or not buy more of this, hear more of this, there's no better time to become a PHNX diehard. Go to gophnx.com. You can join us in the Discord chat. You get a free t-shirt of your choice from the locker, a diehard membership card that you can go around at the Footprint Center and show everyone, oh my God, look how cool I am. Access to all of our premium written content. And like I said, Discord Lounge, you guys, that is literally my favorite place on, again, the planet of the Earth. And you get discounts like on all of our events, like this super cool PHNX Cardinals away game watch party that they're having this weekend, September the 8th, when the Cardinals take on the Buffalo Bills on the road. So again, go to gophnx.com, become a diehard, and join us in the chat. Stephen, I'm really sad that this is our only show this week. So in the meantime, tell the folks how they can find you.
You can find me on Twitter at StayTrueS.3. You can find me on YouTube as well at Stephen Prejean Garner 3. We'll definitely have some film stuff coming up. I might take a look at Celeste Taylor's performance from yesterday ahead of tomorrow's game, so be on the lookout for that. Might potentially do a little question and answer tomorrow. If not tomorrow, before the game following, just to kind of answer any questions any of our beloved fans and supporters might have. So be on the lookout on the timeline for that from my page. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Basketball References WNBA newsletter. A whole lot of goods in that, whole lot of historical information, just a whole lot of just general information to make you a more informed basketball enthusiast. You can bring a lot of this context to your coworkers, to your fans, to your friends, obviously on the timeline. Tap in with it. All you got to do is go to Google, type in Basketball Reference WNBA newsletter. You'll give them your email address, and you'll get information in your inbox every morning around 9 or 10 o'clock. So tap in with that and use it as the resource that it is.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Erika Lee Day, and you can tap in with both of us at PHNext_Mercury on Twitter. And you can see Chloe having a field day over there as well. So, join us all over on the PHNext_Mercury Twitter account, where we just have the biggest time of our lives. That being said, Andy, we will have 2 shows next week, so you don't have to wait too long. We'll see you very, very soon. And until then, have a great day, and we'll see you guys next week.